Alright, in our video lesson today, we are going to be learning two different methods of just simply how to count significant figures. So your goal should be to identify the number of significant figures in a given number. Significant figures of a number or measurement are those digits that carry meaning to its precision. Comes as a direct result from the number of the divisions the measuring device contains, which we talked about in our previous lesson. So the first method is a very simple kind of trick to knowing how many sig figs are in a number. It's called the Atlantic-Pacific method. So one thing you do need to know is that the Pacific Ocean is on the west, or think of it as the left-hand side of the U.S., and the Atlantic is on the east coast, or on the right-hand side of the United States. So what does this mean? If a decimal is present, start counting from the Pacific or left-hand side, starting with the first non-zero digit. So in this number, I have a decimal point present. I'm going to start on the left-hand side and go over until I hit my first 1 through 9 number. Once I get there, I'm going to continue counting anything from that point on. So again, I go to the first 1 through 9 number, ignoring these zeros out in front. I then continue to count anything after that point, including these zeros at the end. So this number, we would say, has 4 significant figures. However, if a decimal point is absent, we start counting digits from the Atlantic or right-hand side, starting with the first non-zero or 1 through 9 digit. So in this case, we're going to start on the right-hand or Atlantic side. We're going to go over until we get to the first 1 through 9 number, and then count everything as we continue on moving left. So we would then again go to the 6 and then count everything to the left, which means that this number, 75,600, has 3 significant figures. If, however, just keep in mind, this number was 75,600 and included a decimal point there, we would then revert back to the Pacific side method, where we would start from the left-hand Pacific side and move over so that we're counting all the digits involved, and thus this would be 5 sig figs. Okay, so something to point out that will keep coming up as we go through these examples. So here's some practice that we're going to do A, B, and C together. Decimal point is present. We're going to start counting from the left-hand or Pacific side, which means that this number, 0.0603, has only 3 significant figures. Letter B, we count from the Atlantic side, which means then that we are going to find that we have also 3 significant figures. And then for C, we have a decimal point present, so we're going to start from the Pacific or left-hand side, which means that all digits are counted or are significant, which means we have 5 significant figures. Alright, what you might want to do at this point for the next 6 examples is pause the video and see if you can determine the number of significant figures, and then replay it and see how you do. So hopefully you have a chance to try these out. Okay, we're just going to kind of quickly go through these. D, we have 3 significant figures. E, we have 3 significant figures, and F, we have 6 significant figures. One thing I obviously want to point out is letter E, which might be the trickiest for students. There is a decimal point present, so we start on the Pacific or left-hand side, which means that we are counting everything from the first 1 through 9 number over. That's how we got that 3. Alright, G, H, and I. G should get 4 significant figures. H is 2, and I is also 2. And again, you can see here, G and I have decimal points. So this is how I got my 4 significant figures and my 2. However, in H, the decimal point is absent, so that means I only have those 2 significant figures. Alright, there is one other method, which is just memorizing the rules for counting sig figs. The first rule is that all 1 through 9 numbers are always significant. So in this case, we only have 1 through 9 numbers, so that means we have 4 sig figs. The second rule is that zeros that are located between non-zero numbers are always significant. So these 2 zeros here, okay, are going to be counted as significant because they're located between non-zeros, which means then we have 5 sig figs. It would also be the case if this was my number instead. Okay, these would all be significant, and we would also have 5 sig figs. Okay, because we have 1 through 9 numbers that are on the outside of those zeros. Alright, zeros at the beginning of a number are not significant, and by beginning, I mean before a 1 through 9 number. Okay, so for this number, I'm not going to count these zeros out at the beginning because they come before the first 1 through 9 number, so then I'll count everything else that remains, which is a 4 sig figs. And then our fourth rule, zeros at the end of a number not containing a decimal point are not significant. So for this example, these zeros, because there is no decimal point, are not going to be significant, which means then that I have 4 sig figs. What I mean by that they're not significant is that it does not pertain to its precision. These are only placeholders. Okay, it does not relate to its precision. And we'll go over that tomorrow because that can be a tricky concept to wrap your head around. All right, and then number 5, zeros at the end of a number containing a decimal point are always significant. So these two numbers have decimal points and zeros at the end. Those zeros at the end are significant. So A has 5 and B has 6. All right, in summary of those rules in method 2 is that there's no decimal point, only count non-zero digits and zeros found between non-zero digits. If a decimal point is present, count those non-zero digits, the zeros found between those non-zero digits, and also the zeros at the end of the number. So the big difference between no decimal point and decimal point is the fact that the zeros at the end of the number do count when that decimal point is present. All right, you are all set, so just complete the little summary and or pose a question about the video, and then you are all set with Concept B.